He got the job done, beating the Knicks at home again to take a 3-1 series lead. It was an ugly game that boiled down to some tough Miami defense and some incredibly timely rebounding. An incredible effort that has Miami firmly in control of the series. We break it all down today's playoff edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. David, we're sitting here somewhere at Kaseya Center after the Miami Heat's 109-101 win over the New York Knicks. They go up 3-1 in this series now. They are a win away from making the conference finals. So going back to the Eastern Conference Finals here, unbelievable run that this has been right now for the number 8 seed in the playoffs. What sticks out to me for this game, let's just jump right in. Bam Adebayo, big game from him, especially in the first half. Jimmy Butler, big game overall, 7 points in that fourth quarter to bring them home. But it was a strange game. It was a strange game because it wasn't the normal Jimmy Butler game. He took just 17 shots. This was more like regular season Jimmy Butler is almost than playoff Jimmy. And then Bam got going early, but then kind of faded late. They had to get points from here and there. They were shooting 40-something percent from three-point range in the first three quarters, and then missed all of their three-pointers in the entire fourth quarter. When the game really got bogged down, they had 90 points going into the fourth quarter. They scored just 19 in that final period. Like that fourth quarter just felt like it didn't belong to the rest of this game. And the Knicks made a run. And there was an opportunity there for the Heat to just let this one slip away. The Knicks were the team on the ropes. They were the ones that had to get this win. And yet it's the Heat that are doing just enough things. They've all of a sudden become this like elite offensive rebounding team in the fourth quarter, and they come away with this win. And I can't help but think, like, is this just what this team is right now? Because this is the same team that, I mean, this is almost a repeat of what happened in that Milwaukee series. You had the Bucks on the ropes. They had to win to save their season, and yet the Heat were able to pull that one out in the fourth quarter. This wasn't a come from behind win in the same way, but it was one that it very much felt like the Heat could have let slipped away, and they found a way to pull it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they were the more poised team today. They showed the kind of tenacity that you come to expect from a Miami team that we haven't seen during the regular season, and they've suddenly found this fountain of tenacity in the playoffs. It's unbelievable how they responded. It seemed like New York wasn't playing badly, not until the fourth quarter when both teams were really playing badly. In the third quarter in particular, I think the Knicks shot something like 70% in the third quarter, and yet Miami seemed to find a way to respond. They had a brief lead. They had a small lead at halftime, and just despite New York finding a way to succeed, they shot 76.5% in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So, and the Heat extended their lead by a point in that quarter.
So, despite the fact that the Knicks were playing as well as you can possibly imagine, Miami still found a way to respond. They showed the poise, the leadership, everybody finding a way to contribute. Look, Knicks, I think, pulled out the final measure, whatever you want to call it, the final step to unlock their team by starting Quentin Grimes. And at first, it seemed like he was doing a pretty good job of at least being physical and bodying up Jimmy in a way that Josh Hart had not been able to. And it simply didn't matter because everybody else found a way to contribute. Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Kyle Lowry off the bench. So many different players. Bam, as you mentioned, had a big game. It was just it's really weird. I like that descriptor because there's no way around it. It was 3 quarters of pretty solid, good basketball, and then a fourth quarter that is perfect for Erik Spoelstra. As he said so many times throughout the regular season, he loves when these games are in the mud, and he loves Miami's response to them. And he also talked about in the postgame, so many clutch games throughout the regular season, finding a way to win when players are in and out of the lineup, changing the rotations, changing starting units, etc., and still finding a way to contribute to winning, because that's all that matters. That's the bottom line, and Miami found a way to do it.
You know what that fourth quarter reminded me of? It was kind of like that episode in The Sopranos where Tony's just like in a dream for the entire episode. And you're like, why is this even in the show? It just felt like it didn't belong. Or like that episode of Breaking Bad where you're just like following a fly the entire time, and it just sort of interrupts the flow of the whole season. You're like,
Right.
all right, like you're the director. I guess you're flexing a little bit. This is like
trying
to think, and that's what it felt like. The Heat were just like, you know what, we're kind of winning this game. You know, no matter how many shots the Knicks make, we're still going to extend our lead. Let's just try something new. Let's just like, what if we did this, guys? What if we just didn't make a three-pointer for the entire fourth quarter? Let's just miss our last 10 three-pointers of the game, and let's see if we could still win this one.
Maybe the physicality of the first three quarters just had everybody gassed. Like both teams shot.
They did look tired. Both teams.
I think there was a level of exhaustion there, and like you see players now. Miami with the win, and it's not like your typical response. They're coming into the post game in the locker room, and they just seem tired.
Yeah,
and conversely, the Knicks players, are also exhausted, and they lost. So it's like you try as hard as you can for 75% of the game. You've almost got nothing left, and Miami had just enough. They had created that lead, that enough of a cushion, and did enough defensively, and their rebounding work late in the game was sensational. You hinted at it before.
Yeah.
Incredible. I mean, I know it's a loser.
No, the 50-50 balls I thought were really huge too for them. And Julius Randle or Tom Thibodeau after the game, both of them kind of saying like, I don't know what it was. Like, we're the team that's been getting those 50-50 balls all season, and yet Miami's the one that's doing it. And you just see the Heat. They went into Milwaukee. They beat Milwaukee. They broke the Bucks. They had to fire their coach. Questions about Giannis's future in Milwaukee. I won't go so far as to say they've broken the New York Knicks because they still have to win another game in this series. But I want to go to something Eric Spoelstra said too about how the regular season kind of
provided
it's kind of forged
by
this
fire,
forged by like it's they know how to go through the ups and downs, and there was another game this year. It might have been, what was it, the game 3? It was another game in this series where it felt like they would have lost this if it was in the regular season. Or no, we were talking about that game 2 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, and that could have in the regular season just been a 3-game losing streak.
Oh, for sure.
That's what would have happened.
Right.
In the playoffs, this team just has a resiliency and a confidence that you just can't really describe other than just saying they're very resilient and they're very confident. And I don't really know how else to explain it. And Kevin Love was asked about it after the game. Jimmy Butler, Max Strus, everybody's like, we have that confidence that you're talking about. We have it. And everybody's like, why? And they're like, I don't know. And Kevin Love kind of just pointed to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. It was like, as long as we have those two guys, we're good, and we'll ride them at the end and make sure that they bring us home. And look, you look at them, and 27 points for Jimmy Butler, team high. Bam was second with 23 points. He was big in that first half. Like, I don't know if it's too simplistic to just say that, but I do think that let me ask you this. Do you think that there's something to what Spo said in terms of the ups and downs of the regular season, getting them prepared for sort of the ups and downs of the playoffs?
I think it shows you how to find a way to win. And that's the ultimate goal. Like I said before, I think
he keeps saying there's a beauty in the grind. He keeps saying that.
Right. I think for Spo, like a guy who is so committed to the work, constantly challenging himself, etc., it makes a whole lot of sense to enjoy these kinds of games. But from the head coach to guys like Jimmy and Bam, both of whom are such devoted workaholics, it makes a lot of sense to say they kind of just learned we have to do these steps. We have to follow this. All these clutch games, all these different lineups, struggling through their shooting woes. Look, again, tonight, they wound up shooting less than 40% from 3. And you know, it was just, it boiled down to who wants that rebound more. And sometimes it's not about skill or talent or your draft position or anything like that. Sometimes it's just a matter of having the chutzpah, as you said, the las ganas in español, to just want it, to go after it, to chase down that board. 17 rebounds in the fourth quarter compared to just 8 for New York. That's incredible. The one possession there that I think broke New York's spirit, to your point, it was multiple offensive rebounds. They kept missing shot after shot. Duncan Robinson, unfortunately, struggling with his shot in the fourth quarter. He was 0 of 4, and it led to those offensive rebounding opportunities. So just finding a way to carve out these victories, having learned the hard lessons throughout the regular season, I think it does play a factor. I'll be 100% honest with you.
I have that quote from earlier that I was trying to remember. It was Julius Randle said, maybe they won it on getting all the loose balls the Heat did. Julius Randle, maybe they want it more. I don't know. That's been who we are all year. This is a team that just feels defeated. It just seems defeated. Mitchell Robinson,
they played saying good that basketball. I mean, with the exception of Julius, who struggled. They played mostly good basketball. I mean, they had a fantastic game from Jalen Brunson.
He was awesome tonight.
Quentin Grimes was hitting his threes. They were getting a boost here and there. Julius Randle was getting his points, despite the fact that he was providing lackluster effort. But then it seemed like it amounted to nothing.
Yeah,
and that resiliency that Miami just has seemed to find during the postseason, I don't
don't
know.
know. I don't even. Maybe resiliency is the right word. Maybe I should look up the definition again. But it just like this is a team that led most of the game.
Yeah.
Like this isn't like
They
coming
had
back from 15 down the way they did in Milwaukee. It just felt like this team doesn't let go the way that it did in the regular season anymore. And why that is, I'm not quite sure. It's not even like Jimmy Butler had a huge fourth quarter. He had 6 or 7 points in the fourth quarter.
Fine.
He was fine. He did what he had to do. I thought actually more impressive for Jimmy was the 10 assists. Nobody was talking about that after the game. But I don't know. This is just
well, I think that was a byproduct of being guarded as closely as he was by Grimes.
He said he loves being double teamed, and that's why he was able to find, and he loves to find his open teammates. We do have credit cookies that we want to hand out in the next segment, and I want to talk about Max Strus and maybe, I don't know, could be the most important defensive play of the game in a game full of great defensive plays. We'll talk about that next, David. But first, tell listeners about our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. It's the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets to all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, so you can stop stressing over your tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. Gametime has made it so easier if you're in town or even here. Like if you're traveling, if you're looking for a way to kill an afternoon or an evening and you want to see a concert or sporting event, maybe you just got the impulse. It's fun to sometimes be, not planning as well. And you just go, you know what, let's find tickets to such a sporting event. Well, Gametime has you covered, and you can see exactly where you're going to be sitting in whatever venue you're choosing. And that's what makes it so convenient, is that you're not going to get any kind of obstruction. You're going to find what you're looking for. You're going to get the right tickets, and they've got it with their low price guarantee. And that makes it all the much better because you save money when you buy those tickets through Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and wherever it is that you get your podcast. Every day, we'll be back Wednesday morning with our friend Dan Devine from Yahoo Sports. He's going to talk all things Heat Knicks, and if the Knicks season is over, what they have to do to keep their season alive. All right, let's move on to credit cookies. It's a Heat win. What kind of cookies are we giving out today, David?
I hadn't even thought about it, to be 100% honest with you. Let's go. We've been consistent. Let's go the cheesecake cookie route again. I know that we got some responses to how the cheesecake gets into the cookie.
Ooh, tell me more.
I don't know exactly how it was.
Somebody saw response.
Somebody emailed us and said, I think that they bake the cheesecake into it, the cheesecake filling, something to that effect. So let's just go with that. Cheesecake cookies, and we'll have to start with Jimmy Butler, right? He set the template, he set the tone. Aggressive early on, aggressive late, trying to challenge Quentin Grimes, get to the line, do things that were necessary, again, to help extend that cushion, to continue to build on it, to break New York's spirit. 3 cookies seems fair just because everybody else played.
We have a lot to give out.
No, so there's a lot to give out.
Yeah.
It's been a recurring theme for us, for the Heat during these playoffs, is that despite Jimmy's brilliance, despite Bam having impactful nights, other players finding a way to step up. Like 3 for Jimmy.
This was one of my favorite Jimmy Butler games, I think, of the playoffs, now that I'm thinking about it. It was subtle. It was quiet. It wasn't his best. It wasn't even close to his best, right? But I enjoyed it because it was 27 points and 10 assists, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocked shots. Like, it was just this was like a really good Jimmy Butler regular season game. And I think it's important because it showed that the Heat can win without Jimmy Butler going crazy, right? Going like full blown Michael Jordan 2.0. Like he doesn't have to do that in order for the Heat to win. And a big part of that was because Bam Adebayo was big. 16 points in the first half for him, ended up with 23 overall. I loved what the Heat were doing early in the game to get Bam open. They were getting him sort of in that low block free throw line area that he likes to try to get to by having a couple of different screeners involved, him coming off of some cross screens in the low block, and then either Jimmy or somebody else sort of getting him with the entry pass, and now he's kind of on the run, kind of bringing Mitchell Robinson out, and he can kind of get to that free throw line jumper that he wants to get to, or some of those staggered screens and double screens, just get the right switches and mismatches on him. And it just felt like the Knicks couldn't figure out how they kept getting the mismatches, and they couldn't figure out how to get out of it because there were so many screens happening early in the shot clock, and it just felt like immediately the Knicks defense was just getting in rotation before like there was even 2 passes from the Heat. And whatever happened, it was working in the first half. I think they made some halftime adjustments in that second half. I'd have to go back and like really look at what happened there because it was all moving so fast. But I I think that might have been part of the reason why Bam's second half was a little bit slower than the first half.
Yeah.
That said, the first half was really important for the Heat to set the tone, and Bam was the leading scorer in that first half.
So are we giving how many cookies to Bam then?
I think 2 might be fair.
2 is fair. 2 is fair. I mean, look, you can say a lot. The rebounding, the effort,
the rebounding from him was so important. More on that, because 13 rebounds in this game, 3 offensive rebounds, 10 defensive rebounds. He out-rebounded Mitchell Robinson. And Mitchell Robinson had a quote after the game saying, well, he's like, I used to do that well, and I guess I don't anymore. And I'm paraphrasing. But it's just like, that's it. That's Mitchell Robinson's response.
It does seem like a team that's looking for answers at this point. I mean, maybe if there's a takeaway on the Knicks side of things, and we're seeing Knicks fans by the bushel just kind of jump off the bandwagon here, and they're looking for answers, because I think we saw what, Thibodeau made his adjustment, made his change.
Yeah, starting Quentin Grimes.
Yeah,
that was it.
And that's it.
You and I were talking about this before the game, and I was like,
that Grimes is going to be the factor, and yet he did get the start, or I said he was going to get more minutes, if not get the start, and that was it. And ultimately didn't mean anything.
I think if Quentin Grimes, and I like Quentin Grimes, I like him a lot. I've liked him from college. He's a good player. But if he's the answer to how you're winning a playoff series, you were not prepared for the test.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I don't know what other answers Tom Thibodeau has. Like, swapping Quentin Grimes in for Josh Hart, who's a good player, is like not really like the major lineup. It's not like having Grimes in there changes the look and feel of what they're doing from a starting 5, the way that like Steve Kerr moved JaMychal Green into the starting line. Like, it gives you a different look. Like, that's not what
he's Josh Hart 2.0, basically.
Right, exactly. So I'm like, okay, cool, I guess. Like, that's not a meaningful change for me. It didn't matter. And it did not matter. No. And so I just don't know what the Knicks do other than just play better. And maybe they can play better. But they made a lot of shots tonight.
Yeah.
And
they were fine.
Like, they needed to make that many shots, and Julius Randle needed to have a big game in order to beat like sort of a ho-hum Miami Heat game.
Yeah.
They didn't play great tonight. I don't think that he played like an awesome game this entire series, and yet they're up 3-1.
Yeah. I think it, simplistic as it might seem, cliche and everything else, one team wants it more, and that's the Heat. And they have the poise, the experience, the leadership. And that's, I think another factor is you've got Kyle Lowry. You've got the good vibes that Kevin Love has provided in that locker room. You've got Bam doing all the little dirty work that is such an inspiration to all the other players. Like, you're talking about Kevin Love, a decorated championship-winning veteran, and he's alluding to Bam being one of the guys that it's going to carry us to a championship or carry us to the next win, et cetera. And
last year's run meant a lot to this team too. Max Strus was talking a lot about that in the locker room after the game, just like how much they learned and reflect on that playoff run last year and how impactful that was on this group. Because, I guess this is the benefit of running it back, where you and I everybody was like, why would you run it back after such a frustrating regular season? Obviously, that wasn't the right decision. Who knows if that ultimately is the right decision, but right now it looks pretty good with this team kind of just totally in lockstep right now and knowing where their bread is buttered. They're basically, hey, we're going to follow Jimmy and we're going to follow Bam.
Well, I was going to say about the Julius Randle thing, like he's giving kind of like Hassan Whiteside type vibes where, as much as some Heat fans appreciated what Whiteside did, the effort is so questionable that despite the 20 and 10 and whatever production he might have, it just doesn't feel like it amounts to anything. It's empty calories.
His 20 points were so artificial, man. Like 8 for 13. Credit for him making.
Bam, his defense was so good. He was great. Randle was just hitting some really tough shots.
Randle made really tough shots. The Knicks in general in the first half, I'm watching that game and I was like, I think the Heat are going to blow this team out. And they never really did.
No.
But I also felt pretty comfortable with this team in the fourth quarter. I never really thought they were going to lose the game either. So whatever that means.
But they cut a lead to, I think,
7. In the fourth quarter, maybe it was 6 or 7.
Yeah, and then they responded with like, well, no, it wasn't in the fourth quarter. It was earlier in the third. Then they cut the lead that had been the 9, and then they cut it to 2, and then they responded with a Kevin Love 3-pointer, and then a Max Strus shot, and then it was just another big play, another layup, etc., another stop on defense. This back and forth. It was just Miami knows how to find a way to respond. Yeah. They take your toughest punch. They take your best shot, which is what we've seen for the New York Knicks, and they find a way to win, whether it's the adversity of the regular season, the internal toughness, whatever it is, the great leadership, so many different factors there, but they win. They win basketball games. And I can't believe we're talking about this because in April, this team looked dead in the water. They had no energy. They were lifeless. We've talked about the switch that maybe they flipped in order to get into the postseason, but this is a completely different team. They look, I hate to say unbeatable, but Looking at all the other teams,
Not
in the playoff
unbeatable.
race.
Not unbeatable. Let's try to work this. Unshakable,
That's fair.
right?
That's fair.
They
Yeah.
could be beaten. Any
They-
team could be beaten, but they're unshakable. And I think that's as important as anything when you're looking at a team like the Knicks, who are shook. And I'm watching this other series between Boston and Philadelphia, and I think they're just shaking each other.
They have an opportunity to close out the series in Game 5 on Wednesday night, and that will put them at 2 losses throughout the whole postseason. Like
Yeah.
there are series now that are tied 2-2.
Only one loss with Jimmy Butler playing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then one loss. Where if not for some tough officiating, Miami might have swept the series.
Yeah, and the Bucks shooting like 50% from 3-point
Yeah.
range. Yeah.
These incredibly atypical performances.
Let's put a pin in that. I want to talk a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I do want to kind of explore that a little bit more in the next segment. But really quick, I want to talk about that Max Strus defensive play before we go to break here. That charge on Julius Randle that he took, 3 minutes left in the game, the Heat are up by 7. Like I said, I never really felt like this game was getting out of hand for the Miami Heat, but if it was going to get out of hand, that was where it was going to get out of hand. Is 3 minutes left, Julius Randle making another tough basket. Jalen Brunson makes another tough basket. Next thing you know, it's a possession game in the final minute, and who knows what can happen. We saw this in the regular season. Julius Randle hits a miracle 3-pointer. Knicks walk off the court with the win, and you're like, what just happened?
Right.
Max Strus knows that Julius Randle has 5 fouls. I know this because I asked Max Strus, did you know that he had 5 fouls? And he said, yes, absolutely. And I said, and then he went on to, and I asked him a little bit more about it, and he went on to explain. He's like, look, I just knew that if I had an opportunity where Julius Randle was going to drive, that he didn't say it so much as he's been kind of just like driving like a bull into in a China shop this entire game.
Right.
So I knew I could probably draw that charge, which is why I had 5 fouls in the first place. But that's the understanding that he had, right? And so he knew, like, hey, if this guy tries to drive into the lane, I'm going to slide in front of him and I'm going to pick up the 6th foul on him and I'm going to get him thrown out of this game. And that's exactly what happened. I thought it was such a heads up play. And in a game where Jimmy Butler had a block that was very reminiscent of Bam on Jason Tatum on Quentin Grimes right at the basket to take a dunk out of the hoop, basically, where Gabe Vincent had a couple of steals, where Max Strus had a swipe and score. Kyle Lowry had a bunch of big defensive plays, including charges drawn.
Yeah.
I thought that was the most impactful, important, meaningful defensive play of the entire game, was Strus getting Julius Randle out of it. And now you don't even have your tough shot maker in the game if you're the Knicks. And that, to me, was it. That was it. That was over.
I mean, it could have been a huge X factor had Randle continued to play, because, I mean, the chaos of not knowing whether he's going to be able to knock down these shots or not just throws a monkey wrench into whatever poise or tenacity you might have.
Sure, and maybe you have to double him, and that opens up something else for the Knicks.
Yeah, sure. So, it was a really great play by Max.
Can I give him 2 credit cookies
For that?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, so we've got 3.
Timely shooting, too.
5.
It's not just
the shooting was great. Yeah, I should mention 16 points. He was the 3rd leading scorer for the Heat.
40% from 3. He was Miami's best 3-point shooter. In fact, at one point, Duncan came in there, missed a bunch of threes, and you kind of say, you know what? Put Max back in there. Like, he's at least willing and decisive to take those shots, and it made a huge difference.
All right, we've got a few more credit cookies to hand out, and then we want to explore what we were talking about earlier in terms of maybe the Heat closing this thing out.
Take a break here.
Madison Square Garden. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks and their $1 million daily Superflex promotion every day of the NBA playoffs, including the NBA Finals. One PrizePicks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. One entry placed after 8 a.m. will be randomly selected each day. You get 6 correct picks, you get $1 million. 5 correct picks will get a payout of $80,000. 4 correct picks will lead to $16,000. You can find all details at PrizePicks.com/million, and you must opt in at that link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal, and you could be the lucky winner. Daily fantasy made easy. You just go up against the projected numbers from PrizePicks. You pick 2 to 6 players. You can win up to 25 times your money. It's that easy. All the sports that you might be looking for, the NBA, Major League Baseball, men's and women's college sports, you want it, you can find it over at PrizePicks. So download the PrizePicks app or go to PrizePicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100 by downloading the PrizePicks app or going to PrizePicks.com today.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Everydayers, we'll be back Wednesday morning with our friend Dan Devine from Yahoo Sports, talking everything Heat Knicks, how the Heat can close this one out, or how the Knicks can maybe delay that. All right. Credit cookies, we've given out 7. That means we have 3 left. And I have 3 players left. So maybe we just do 1 to each. Gabe, Kyle Lowry, Caleb Martin.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, quick, Gabe Vincent, 3 points.
Yeah.
But had
Struggle
2
shooting.
steals. I
Right.
thought his defense was really important, despite the Jalen Brunson stuff. I don't know. Is it too much to give him a cookie? Is it worth just a
No,
shout out? 1 of 7 overall. It was not a
it's
great Gabe game, but I liked his floor game in general.
yeah, it's the tweak in Miami's defense that we saw last game, where he's been picking up Brunson full court. A few of those foul calls, completely ridiculous. I think it was official Zach Zarba who made some really head scratching calls, and then you
He
never
had
want to
3
point too
fouls in
much.
this game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't want to point too much to some of those, but I think that was part of it. And unfortunately, the offense just hasn't clicked in after having those big games early on in the series. I think the Knicks have responded by trying to challenge him a little bit more. They've been sending more doubles at him and then just kind of just forcing him into tougher shots. I don't know that we're going to get another big offensive game from Gabe in this series, but as long as he continues to do his job of defending Brunson and trying to force him into bad shots, sometimes it works, sometimes it
Brunson
doesn't.
made a lot of tough shots in this game. And you can look at the 32 points and the 10 to 21 and being like, what are you talking about?
Right.
I thought Gabe defended him really well on a lot of those tough
2 of
shots.
7 from 3-pointers. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Also, is that if he hits a couple more of those,
I mean, I can't tell how he had that one like rainbow fadeaway from the baseline that
Corner, yeah,
banked
right
in at the end of the shot clock. And you're like, what is even going on right now? He had 5 assists, Gabe Vincent did. And that to me is the important stat here. And I love,
bam.
and in a postseason where Gabe Vincent has been asked to do so much after Tyler Herro got hurt, he could have come out here and forced the issue.
Right.
He could have and been like, hey, I'm the guy that has to do this. And yet he sees Max catching fire. He sees Bam doing his thing. He knows that Jimmy Butler is going to get to his spots. And he actually just sort of turned it down from 11. He's like, you know what? Let me just move this to a 6 or a 7 here. And that's all my teammates is going to need. I think that's not an easy thing to do for a youngish player in a new-ish spot, right? Where he has been so aggressive and being praised by coaching staff, teammates, the media. We love how aggressive you're being, and then just him to come out, read the game and be like, this is not the time for me to be so aggressive. Let me get these other guys involved. And he had the second most assists on the team by only Jimmy Butler. So I like it. One, Kyle Lowry. Maybe you've gone too long without talking in depth. 15 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds. He had a steal. Key here, 0 turnovers.
Yeah.
Got to the free throw line, went 5 of 6 from the free throw line, went 2 for 4 from 3-point range, 4 of 6 overall. This is a guy who in these playoffs continues to make a major impact without doing too much. He's not putting up a ton of shots. He's not hogging the ball. That usage rate's not very high, and yet his PER is through the roof right now. He's been awesome, and he was awesome again tonight.
No, he's out there. This is the veteran leadership. This is the experience factor. He's decisive with the ball, but defensively, he switched on to Randall a number of times, harassing him, rattling him to the best of his ability, taking charges, like doing everything. Again, just swatting at the ball, making ball handlers uncomfortable, doing whatever was necessary. It boggles the mind that we're seeing Kyle Lowry be this effective after his struggles throughout most of the regular season. We already know the injury was a factor. He sat out for a large amount of time, and he's been back, and he's been so effective. But this is the version of Kyle Lowry that they expected when they signed him, a couple of years ago. He was supposed to be a presence in the postseason. That's where it matters most. So I think we can just overlook the past 82 games and just say, you know what? Who cares? This is Kyle Lowry. This is who he's been throughout most of his career. This is who he's going to be now throughout the postseason, assuming he does not get hurt. And he's just going to continue to be effective and a strong, impactful player, making a difference off the bench.
Speaking of that bench, outscored the Knicks 32-10 in this game. Complete 180 from what happened in the regular season, where the Knicks had the third best bench in the league by scoring margin, and the Heat were in the bottom 10.
They had
one of the most inconsistent benches in the NBA.
I mean, everybody just seems to struggle there. They just don't Obi Toppin.
No Emmanuel Quickley for the Knicks because of the ankle injury for him, but it wasn't like he was lighting the world on fire when he was playing in this series. So Caleb Martin was a big part of Miami's bench. 10 points on 4 of 8 shooting, 2 of 5 from 3-point range, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and all of that is to say the best dunk in the game.
Unbelievable.
Great dunk. You get a credit cookie just for the dunk, but also the points and all these things. Caleb Martin, just another awesome all-around effort from him. And then he got the highlight to boot.
If he had been out there for just that one possession, he probably still would have gotten a cookie. It was that good of a dunk. He just crashed through, just yammed it on, I think it was Randall,
Yep.
or it might have been Robinson. Either way, he finished in traffic. Phenomenal. Again, momentum shifting. You can kind of feed off the energy, and great energy from the Heat crowd, who have absolutely drowned out all the noise about MSG South, all the Knicks fans in attendance, etc. They were loud.
I didn't even see that many Knicks fans unless
They're
the
less.
Knicks fans decided also to wear white for
No,
some reason.
they are less. There are less than we saw during the regular season. There are less than even I saw in Game 3.
Yeah,
they're not showing up because
it's a Monday night. Maybe they had to go back to work, but also isn't the whole idea is that all the Knicks fans live in Miami now and
Right.
you're supposed to show up? So obviously that didn't happen.
It was loud out there.
All right,
for you Heat fans.
We're kind of pushing we're pushing it in terms of time right now, but I do want to just revisit the thing that we teased going into this segment. I don't want to look ahead. I'm not looking ahead. All right. But when you kind of just look at the teams that are left in the Eastern Conference, the 4 teams, Miami Heat, the New York Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Boston Celtics. And I'm going to ask you to put the Locked On Heat hat away, and I want you to put the Locked On NBA hat on. Okay. So we're going national perspective, you and me right now.
Sure.
Okay. No local bias. Are the Heat easily the most impressive team in the Eastern Conference so far?
Most impressive
in the East? Are they the most impressive team left in the playoffs?
Yes. I don't think that's even debatable,
It's
considering what they've accomplished.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking about a team that has 2 total losses that are aberrations, and yet they just continue to find a way to beat teams here. They beat the Milwaukee Bucks, and yet
it sounds almost like an excuse for the 2 losses, but when you really think about it, it's not. The 2 losses being aberrations, because I don't feel like the Heat were outplayed necessarily in any game in these
Victor
playoffs.
Oladipo, they lost Tyler Herro. Tyler Hero's like their second leading scorer, their third leading scorer. I mean, he's come through in clutch situations. All these games, maybe who knows what the leads would be like, and maybe he'd be targeted on defense. Those are questions for another day. And there's a possibility he might even be available to Miami at some point down the stretch too. But
it seemed like a joke when he said, "I'll be back for the NBA Finals," and now I'm like, "Are you going to be back for the NBA Finals?"
We didn't know they'd advance past Milwaukee, and here they are looking to advance past New York. I was asked by Heat staffer. He said, "Can we beat Boston or Philly?" Assuming again that they beat New York, which seems almost like a foregone conclusion. And I said, "Yeah," and I think they can.
I am less impressed. I'm obviously more impressed with the Heat in the postseason now than I was in the regular season. That's not a hot take. I don't think that I'm a little bit more impressed, and maybe this is recency bias. The Sixers, the way they beat the Celtics on Sunday, more impressed with the Sixers now. It kind of feels like Embiid is getting a little bit healthier, and him and Harden kind of are clicking again the way that they were in the regular season. So something to monitor if you're the Miami Heat and you're looking forward a little bit if you're able to close out this Knicks series. But I think this Celtics team is worse than last year's Celtics team. And the whole idea was the team that got to the finals was supposed to be able to build on that experience and have that in the regular season, in this season. Now, obviously, Ime Udoka being out, Joe Mazzulla being in, and not necessarily expecting to be the head coach of this team and losing as many assistants as they did on that bench, not just the head coach, but they lost so many coaches on the bench. Exactly. Obviously, has played a role, but I haven't been impressed with Jason Tatum in these playoffs. The way that I was super impressed, he was shooting the lights out in the postseason last year. It just has not been as dominant a performance from him. In fact, Jaylen Brown has been, we talked about this yesterday, the better player for the Celtics in the postseason. I think this Celtics team is worse than last year's Celtics team. I think Celtics fans would and are saying that. And I want to monitor that series, and I'm not saying anything other than I'm watching that. But based on what I've seen so far, and that's all I'm saying, the Heat have been the best team in the Eastern Conference right now in these playoffs. And they probably still wouldn't be the favorites in a conference finals, no matter who comes out of that Celtics-Sixers series, because those are the higher seeds, and that's just how it works.
Well, they weren't the favorites against the Knicks or the Bucks.
Right. Well, the Bucks made sense, but yeah. No, they're not going to be the favorites, and they won't. If they make it to the finals, they won't be in the favorites in the finals either.
I don't care.
Newsflash: it doesn't matter, but it just means everything they're doing has been that much more impressive.
Not just like in the literal sense that they might advance to the Eastern Conference Finals after being an 8 seed, but the fact that they just seem to disregard all their critics, all the people that say we doubt you, etc. Like you were making a good point here about the Celtics supposedly being able to build on that, but yet we've seen throughout NBA history that teams that lose find some inspiration in that. And I think tying it all together, they recognize that what they needed to be was better in the postseason, that they did everything they could last year. They got the first seed. They exceeded expectations by a wide margin. And they just said, you know what the hell do we care about winning a game in goddamn February? Let's win it in April. Let's win it in May.
I mean,
when it counts.
but the Celtics lost also. They lost in the finals. And yet they're coming back and acting like they won and that they don't even care.
They're younger. They're not as desperate or as hungry.
I guess not, but it doesn't make sense, right? And I
think it does. I think it does.
It's more. I'm trying to give credit to the Miami Heat and saying that, like, despite the losses, despite the frustrating regular season, despite all of this team has just been unshakable in these playoffs, where they kind of have no business being unshakable after the regular season we just saw, and yet here they are, a game away from making the Eastern Conference Finals. That's going to wrap it up for today. We'll be back Wednesday morning. We're going to be joined by Dan Devine of Yahoo Sports. If you've not read his work, he is awesome. He's been doing this for a long time. We're really excited to talk to him about Heat Knicks. In the meantime, thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube every day. Or, like we said, we will be back Wednesday morning with Yahoo's Dan Devine. In the meantime, David, thanks for joining me.
I'm right here next to you.
You had no choice, I guess.